That's Jonathan Schaefer, who was Dean of Science.
I've got a half-life hitting at EKG readings that are beating the shore to dust. I've got a smartphone crystal ball, touch screen and all, but the screen won't touch. And if this analog melody stuck in my head and it's driving me insane, cause I got this chronic condition that'll suffer no remission, and I'm feeling that I ain't got time. Oh yeah. Show me an android heart, an AI mind, and a spirit in the machine. Show me an optimistic and futuristic prognosis and what it means. Help me to see the future between the sutures. Will it be good or bad, or will we recognize a thing when we all pull the pin? Will it resemble what we had? It's a singularity. Yeah, it's a singularity. Beyond event horizon, will we wisen up or find a kind of glory? What's the story of the singularity?
What you hear is not a test, it's a singularity. A wrist thing, isn't it? To envision it, or does the future look rather dissonant? Robot style, but what about later? Will it be like Terminator? Or are we headed for utopia? Well, follow me and I'll show ya.
Voices from every field across the world are coming to ya. Attend the class or watch from home. It's coming to ya. Solez has the contacts and he's bringing them to ya. It's coming to ya. The future's coming to ya. So come to the future.
Technology and the future of medicine. Lab MP 590.
Anyway, that's it. So how did that come about? Joel Crichton was doing an album and seeking funds for his album, so we made a deal that I would help support the album if he would write a song about the chorus. So he came and was one of the regular students in the course for the first 2 months. And yeah, he really enjoyed it. And the actual the music side is quite simple. One could obviously, enhance that a lot. Lots of other things you could do with that. And I think it was more effective at the time because the Dean of Arts and the Dean of Science were well-known people, whereas to you, those people may not be well-known. So you've seen all these faces, you're thinking, who are those people, But anyway, at the time, the students already knew everybody who was there and so on. So the other people, Osmer Zayan, who is the next person teaching in the course, there are pictures of him and Shauna Banja also. But I think it probably seems a bit unsatisfying to you guys because almost every picture is of somebody that you don't know yet, right? So I mean, that just isn't working. But back then it sort of did work because everybody knew the figures there. Okay, so now let's go to PowerPoint. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the technological singularity explained and promoted. And it's a lecture with a lot of ups and downs. You'll be happy sometimes and sad and frustrated other times and then happy again. Anyway, that's kind of the plan. So you've just watched the song, and so understand that one should not fear complexity. Do not seek the great truth, one great truth. There are many truths that can be true concurrently. So another purpose is to understand the three main schools of belief about singularity, four main paths to the singularity. So Marcus Hutter's presentation, he taught, is there something wrong there? Or?
I just wanted to zoom out so that both you and the screen.
Okay. So he taught by Skype once here and gave us this PowerPoint with audio at that time. I have no idea how widely it's used, but he's kept the link working ever since then. So that was 2012. And the link still works. I don't imagine he did that just for us, but I don't know for sure. And it is an interesting experience because not only is the subject matter sort of very, very intellectually challenging. I mean, even I don't fully understand some of the slides. Like one about the Library of Babel. He and I talked about that on the phone, and he just thought I was a complete idiot. He just gave up that he couldn't teach me that. And so when students have difficulty with that slide, I must admit that I don't completely understand it myself. But the idea is that if you had a library that contained everything, that it's impossible to have an index of what you have, and the everything would include mistakenly printed books, right? So not just properly printed books, but like all books, right? So some of it would be actually very, very difficult to read because of all of the errors and so on. So, but that's just one example of how challenging that is. And then the colors and the PowerPoint template used are a bit somber, right? So you're already feeling bad and like, so what I did to his slides was to put it on a brighter background. So in the presentation I'm giving today, many of the slides are his, but they're a lot brighter than they were when you saw them in his PowerPoint. And Jonathan Schaefer, as I said last time, was of the opinion that this is like the most difficult PowerPoint for students he's ever seen, and he just doesn't understand how you guys were able to cope with it. So if you are able to cope with it, that's something to be proud of, even if you don't understand every slide. Okay, understand the history of the singularity, Marcus Hutter's main ideas about it, understand the challenge, promoting the singularity and the idea behind future day and longevity day. So there's beauty and complexity. The real world is complex. Your significant other is complex. There's nothing about being complex necessarily that's bad. You may be familiar with the term equipoise. I don't know if you know how Canadian that is. If you say equipoise in any other country, people have no idea what you're talking about. If you go to the ethics committee, talk about equipoise, look at you. That's a peculiarly Canadian term. And it means, I think, that we have a more balanced view of ethics than other countries. Seemingly contradictory ideas can all be true. You can find balance between them. For instance, in my area of interest, the future of transplantation is not just one thing, but it's a whole bunch of different things. It's a hybrid of the promotion of old-fashioned things like deceased donor donation until they're on a waiting list, tolerance, tissue engineering, repair, stem cell creation of new organs. So a mixture, sort of exciting new stuff and boring old stuff we've been trying to do for decades and so on. And Peter Diamandis, the Chancellor of Singularity University and of the X Prize Foundation, said when faced with the choice between two desirable goals, choose both. Well, that's all well and good to say, but may not be practical or possible. So long ago, I was trying to find a metaphor or a story that would sort of resonate with students of diverse backgrounds. And I thought most students know Alice in Wonderland, no matter what trajectory you're coming from. And that's a pretty cool way to think about the technology future, because in Alice in Wonderland, you confront a world that's much more organic than expected. The main difficulty Alice had in playing croquet was in managing her flamingo. So the mallet is alive and the ball is alive and everything's alive. Everything's organic, right? Everything's biology. That's the way Alice in Wonderland is. So we face a future that could be exactly the opposite of that, a future that's much less organic than we expect and could develop faster than it's developing now without us, without biological humans. Okay, so the three main schools of belief about the singularity: accelerating change, event horizon, and intelligence explosion. So Marcus Hutter, his presentation is specifically dealing with this idea of intelligence explosion. And the term singularity itself comes from the physics idea of the uncertainty around a black hole and the event horizon. And so anyway, then there are four main paths to the singularity. One is to create an artificial intelligence that exceeds human intelligence. Second is to build human-computer interfaces that allow humans to go beyond their innate intelligence to a significant extent. That's things like brain implants and so on. Cybernetic singularity. The third is the slowest. Find ways in biology to improve on natural human intellect. That's something we can do, but it's probably going to take a very long time, right? Our intellect, such as it is now, has evolved over a very long period and really hasn't changed very much. If you were to take a human born 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, if they were to show up and like learn English and take this class, they'd be just about as capable intellectually as we are today. There hasn't been that much intellectual change over the past 3,000 years. And the fourth is where the internet wakes up. One day you go to your computer, turn on the internet, it starts talking to you, and obviously knows a lot more about what's going on than you do. So build large computer networks in which beyond human intelligence emerges. All these different variations of belief about the singularity are reflected in the courses at Singularity University. And that's where I became interested in this. I showed this picture last time. That was my class there. And Ray Kurzweil's views and intellectual exploration are as broad as that of the university is founded and as broad as yours. And he is reachable. So like, if you become frustrated some night with this whole idea of the singularity, and you can write to him and tell him what your complaint is. And why would you get a reply? Because like 3 of his books are actually written as a reaction to people's comments on his earlier book, right? So, I mean, he's sort of good at this. And you'd find not only does he give a surprisingly adequate answer to whatever your question may have been, but then he'll tell you something else related to that you didn't know. And so it's kind of nice that we're still in that circumstance. I don't know how long it will exist, but that's still true now. So when you hear somebody arguing that Ray Kurzweil is like rigid or hasn't thought about this or that, or hasn't considered this or that, his books are actually exactly stimulated by other people's criticisms and questions. That's how the books start. So that's what he spends a lot of his time with. Okay, so this is the first Marcus Hutter slide. So in history, the first description of something like machine replacement of human labor and technological singularity was in a publication you're probably not very familiar with, a magazine called The Expounder of Primitive Christianity. And that had this writing about the recent invention of the 4-function mechanical calculator. Such machines, by which the scholar may, by turning a crank, grind out the solution to a problem without the fatigue of mental application, would, by its introduction into schools, do incalculable injury. But who knows that such machines, when brought to greater perfection, may not think of a plan to remedy all their own defects and then grind out ideas beyond the ken of mortal mind. So there is the idea of self-improving AI. They may already be smarter than we are, and then they can get much, much smarter than we are. So that's part of the idea. So then in 1863, 4 years after Darwin published On the Origin of Species, Samuel Butler published a letter captioned "Darwin Among the Machines," compares human evolution to machine evolution, prophesizing half in jest that machines would eventually replace man in the supremacy of the earth. The course of the ages, we will find ourselves the inferior race. The letter raises many of the themes that are being debated by proponents of the singularity. And in Erewhon, which is nowhere spelled backwards, Butler argues there is no security against the ultimate development of mechanical consciousness in the form of machines possessing little consciousness now. A mollusk has not much consciousness. Reflect upon the extraordinary advance which machines have made during the last few hundred years, and note how slowly the animal and vegetable kingdoms are advancing. More highly organized machines are creatures not so much of yesterday as of the last 5 minutes, so to speak. Comparison with past time. Okay, so this is the article that he wrote about Can Intelligence Explode? And then the slide set that you have sort of came from that, from presentations that he gave surrounding that article. So this is kind of the history. These are the people who first had the idea. The best known as science fiction author Werner Vinge, and Kurzweil has done the most to popularize the idea with books in 1999, 2005, 2012, and subsequently. And so Marcus Hutter's writing was around 2012. Philosopher David Chalmers has also written about this. This is Moore's Law, which you learned about last time. And so the idea that price performance of computing, the exponential change in that predicts a lot of other things in terms of how soon machines will be able to exceed animal intelligence, human intelligence, and then the combined intellect of the whole human race. So, superintelligence by Moore's Law. Moore's Law has been going on now, has been fulfilled for the past 50 years with price performance of computing doubling approximately every year and a half. And as long as there's a demand for more computation, Moore's Law could continue to hold for many more decades before computronium is reached. And in 20, 30 years, the raw computing power of a single computer will reach the same as the human brain, 10 to the 15th to 10 to the 16th flops per second, and the computational capacity of the human brain, yeah. So software will not lag far behind, so human level AI in 20 to 30 years. So these doubling patterns are quite a bit faster than the way life changed in previous epochs. The hunter-gatherer period is doubling every 250,000 years. So now it doubles every year and a half. These are other ways to look at the evolution of technological time. So Epoch 5 is the merger of technology and human intelligence, and Epoch 6 is the universe wakes up. So in the Jonathan White TEDx presentation that you're required to know the last half of, this idea is also in there of what the final outcome is. Okay, is the singularity negotiable? And he ends up feeling that it's really not. There's no way that this is likely to be interrupted or can be slowed down. He uses the analogy of global warming and says that it is probable that we don't know when this is going to occur, but it is going to occur, and that we cannot really stop it. So some information analogies, and this is where the Library of Babel comes in. Too much information collapses. A library that contains all possible books has zero information content. So that's the thing that he tried to explain to me over the phone. That I was quite frustrated that not only didn't I think I could explain it to students, but I didn't seem to even understand it myself. So maybe a society of increasing intelligence will become increasingly indistinguishable from noise when viewed from the outside. And this is the idea that if you are not going through a singularity, but you're watching people who are, then the sounds they produce will be like white noise to you. Each way, outsiders cannot witness a true intelligence singularity, expansion, whether it occurs sort of inward or outward, follows the path of least resistance. Outward expansion will stop when all accessible convertible matter has been used up. And historically, mankind has always been outward exploring. So strict intelligence singularity is neither experienced by the insiders nor by the outsiders. In other words, if you're going through it, you don't know you're going through it because your life is speeded up, but you don't realize it, right? Because everybody around you is going through the same thing. So then, one of the things Marcus Hutter is proudest of is that he has defined intelligence well. He considers that very central if we're talking about artificial intelligence and machines becoming more intelligent than we are. What is intelligence? So he considers the definition that he has come up with to be the best, one of Legg and Hunter, the best of the 70 plus definitions out there. I leave that to you to judge. And what is it? It's not just speed, it is what you're able to do with whatever intelligence. What will superintelligences actually do? So there are ways to think about evolution, mutation, recombination, selection increases intelligence if useful for survival and procreation. Animals' higher intelligence via some correlated practical cognitive capacity increases the chances of survival and number of offspring. But bacteria are able to reproduce very well, and they're not intelligent. So intelligence is now positively correlated with power or economic success, and actually negatively with the number of children in humans. Genetic evolution has been largely replaced by mimetic evolution. What activities are intelligent? So, self-preservation, self-replication, spreading, colonizing the universe, creating faster, better, higher intelligences, learning as much as possible, understanding the universe, maximizing power over man organizations, or the search for the meaning of life. One of the things I find about Marcus Hutter's presentation, the reason that it is dysphoric is it's kind of cold. He mentions some things like the meaning of life, but they're in a kind of list, right? There are other things that are much more like, mechanical and non-human, like that seem to have equal status. Reasoning toward a goal. This is what he thinks defines intelligence. More flexible notion, expected utility maximization, and cumulative lifetime reward. But who provides the rewards and how? Robots will be rewarded by teacher or hardwired. Goal-oriented behavior often appears to be at odds with long-term pleasure maximization. Still, the evolved biological goals and desires to survive, procreate, parent, spread, dominate are unlikely to be disowned. Who sets the goals for superintelligences and how? Anyhow, ultimately, we will lose control. The AGIs themselves will build further AGIs of artificial general intelligence if they're motivated to do so. And this will gain its own dynamic. And some aspects of this might be independent of the initial goal, structure, and predictable. So the evolving goals assume the initial virtual world is a society of cooperating, competing agents. There will be competition over limited computational resources. Those virtual agents will have a goal to acquire them, will naturally be more successful compared to those with different goals. Successful virtuals will spread and others will perish. So the end result is soon their society will consist mainly of virtual agents whose goal it is to compete over resources. Hostility, this is a line A, hostility will be limited only if this is in the virtual's best interest. So there could be unlimited hostility in this world, right? For instance, current society has replaced war because of economic competition. Since modern weaponry makes most wars a loss for both sides, while economic competition in most cases benefits the least, the better. So the goal to survive and spread whatever amount of resources are available, they will quickly be used up, become scarce. So any world inhabited by multiple individuals, evolutionary and economic-like forces will breed virtuals with the goal to acquire as much resources as possible. Virtuals will like to fight over resources. Winners will enjoy it, while the losers will hate it. Such evolutionary virtual world's ability to survive and replicate is a key trait of intelligence. This is not a sufficient characterization of intelligence, because bacteria are also successful in that endeavor. So are there alternatives to this? Global collaboration, no hostile competition likely requires a powerful single virtual world government and giving up individual privacy and severely limiting individual freedom, like anthills or beehives. Requires societal setup that can only produce conforming individuals. Might only be possible by severely limiting individual creativity. So monistic virtual worlds, such well-regulated societies, might better be viewed as a single organism or collective mind, or maybe the virtual world is inhabited from the outset by a single individual. Both virtual worlds could look quite different, more peaceful or dystopian, the traditional ones created by evolution. Intelligence have to be defined differently. Adaptiveness of intelligence, another important aspect of flexible or adaptive an individual is. Deep Blue might be the best chess player on Earth, but is unable to do anything else. Contrary, higher animals, humans have remarkably broad capabilities. Okay, so here we have something that I think this is for him his peak slide, right? This is the granular, detailed definition of intelligence. Intelligence is the ability to achieve goals in a wide range of environments. Implicitly, this captures most, if not all, traits of rational intelligence, such as reasoning, creativity, generalization, pattern recognition, problem-solving, memorization, planning, learning, self-preservation, many others. It's been rigorously formalized in mathematical terms and is not human-centered, not anthropocentric, wide-ranging, general, unbiased, fundamental, objective, complete, and universal. Most comprehensive formal definition of intelligence so far. That's the claim. Anyway, copying and modifying virtual structures. Copying virtual structures should be as cheap and effortless as it is for software and data today. So the only cost is developing the structures in the first place, memory to store, and the computing resources to run them. Cheap manipulation, experimentation, and copying a virtual life itself is possible. So when we think about avatars having like multiple instances of ourselves, some biological and some electronic, virtual, I think one goal would be to sort of keep our humanity, right? Here in this slide set, we're sort of gradually losing it, right? As we get farther and farther away from the present day, it seems to get colder and colder. Copying and modifying virtual life, virtual explosion with life becomes much more diverse. In addition, virtual lives can be simulated at different speeds, with speeders experiencing slower societal progress than laggards. Designed intelligence will fill economic niches, and our current society already relies on specialists, many years of training, so it's natural to go to the next step. Ease this process by designing our descendants, designer babies. The value of life. Another consequence should be that life becomes less valuable as society values life. Since life is a valuable commodity and expensive, laborious to replace, produce, raise, we value our own life since evolution selects only organisms that value their life. Our human moral code mainly mimics this. If life becomes cheap, motivation to value it will decline. Abundance lowers values, cheap machines decrease value of physical labor, some expert knowledge was replaced by handwritten documents and printed books, and finally electronic files. With each transition, it reduced the value of the same information. Digital computers made human computers obsolete. In games, we value our virtual life and that of our opponents less than real life, because games can be reset, one can be resurrected. So that can potentially be the same for us, right? Maybe it will be possible to back ourselves up, and if something happens, you may lose a few hours, but otherwise you just keep on going. Maybe you weren't enjoying those few hours that you lost anyway toward the end of whatever happened, and so you just reboot and keep on going. But how could that occur in a way that sounds like it would actually be enjoyable, maintain human culture and the things that we hold dear currently, rather than being like progressively colder as this does. The consequences of cheap life. Governments will stop paying my salary when they can get the same research output from a digital version of me, essentially for free. Why not participate in dangerous fun activity? We talked about this last time, the idea of feeling that you are valued less, and so you have nothing to lose by engaging in risk-taking behavior. Doesn't sound like fun, does it? It's not. Yeah. Value virtual life, countless implications, ethical, political, economic, medical, cultural, humanitarian. Much of our society is driven by the fact value human individual life. With so little value assigned to individual life, maybe it becomes a disposable. Are there universal values? Could it be diversity, friendly AI, long-term survival of at least one conscious species that appreciates its surrounding universe be a universal value? Okay, but that wouldn't necessarily be us, right? So we don't know it would be us. Okay, so that's the end of that. And I'm sorry to put you through it, but I think it's a valuable, dysphoric experience. Now we're going to talk about something that's sort of the opposite, which is celebrating the future, celebrating Future Day, which is March 1st in the winter term, and then celebrating something comparable, whatever it is going to be, in the fall term. Now, it's interesting when you talk about longevity. Longevity doesn't seem to be something that Canadians feel very strongly about. And that virtually every other country in the world has a longevity society and various longevity initiatives. Canada lacks that. So it's like an opportunity for somebody. The international organizations have been asking me, who Canada has to put forward. But I've been telling students this for like the whole duration of the course, 9 years, and no student has stepped forward and said, yes, I want to be Canada's longevity person. So it is, I'm kind of concluding that somehow living in Canada and being passionate about longevity don't seem to fit each other somehow. So maybe diversity is better, and that's something else one can celebrate. Interestingly, because of the opiate crisis, life expectancy of young people and of Canadians generally has flattened off, right? It used to be, you can see it's been going up for decades, and now it's flattened off. So that's kind of a striking thing about longevity. Something has changed recently. So the first Future Day we did was March 1st, 2012. There's Joe Crichton, who did the song that you heard at the start of this. And it was a very small celebration. That was the original banner. There was an existing musical band that Joel was already doing, and we sort of tacked that onto it. But that year there were 16 other celebrations of Future Day around the world, and every year since then there have been fewer than 16. So it's not like something that's exponentially increasing. It's like becoming less and less with time. So these are the cities that celebrated it in 2012. And so Julie Lin Wong, who will probably teach in the future here. She has taught in the past. You can see her videos and so on. She had the idea of eventually the Paris Salon was like the intellectual reading ground for a lot of very important work in the 18 and 1900s. And this would be the idea that Edmonton could have something like that, right? We're getting together and creating great stuff. Analogous to Paris Salon. We haven't done this yet. I don't know that we will, but we may, and possibly at the art gallery. So these are students of the past, but anyway, same thing applies to you. You should conceptualize what you would like to do about this, if anything, this year. I suppose you can argue that it's important because so few people are doing it. I also, it tends to suggest that it's relatively unimportant, right? Few people are doing it because it must be, most people think that it's not important enough to do, right? So anyway, so if, for instance, Melbourne, Australia, and Edmonton become the only cities celebrating Future Day this year, you have to kind of, conceptualize what that means. That was kind of the way of it last year, as I recall. So this I talked about before. The Big Bang Theory talks about the same things in a humorous way that we talk about in this course. Reaches a lot more people, so we could try to reach more people. And maybe this idea of a new holiday is one way to do that. But holidays have to have a lot of stuff, right? It's not just, you can't just describe it, well, it'll be Future Day. It has to have pageantry, it has memorable visual and auditory and like smell and taste and everything. If you think about your experience with like Christmas or the other established holidays, there are hundreds of attributes they have that are unique to them that everybody knows about and looks forward to again and so on. So anyway, you probably know in the Asian subcontinent that the Holi festival is quite a thing. It's a bit like Color Me Red, and both have a history. They began with non-toxic pigments from plants. But the brightly colored pigments from plants are really, really hard to find. On the other hand, toxic paints are really easy to find, right? So now, like the Holi Festival, one of the big problems is the medical problems created by all the toxins in these powders. So I'm not saying that's what we should do. Anyway, just get you kind of thinking about what we could do. It's one way to have a visual identity. This is what it looks like. Brings people together who would ordinarily not, who would be in different sectors of society, would never have any interaction. Like you would never talk to the janitor. Then in this instance, the janitor and you would be in the crowd and getting covered with the same brightly colored pigments. So on. For a long time on my Facebook page, this was the only poem on the page that I didn't write. It's about the Crayola bomb. Maybe we should develop a Crayola bomb as our next secret weapon, a happiness weapon, a beauty bomb. And every time a crisis developed, we would launch one. It would explode high in the air, explode softly, and send thousands, millions of little parachutes into the air, floating down to the earth, boxes of Crayolas, and we wouldn't go cheap either. Boxes of 64 with a sharpener built right in, with silver and gold and copper and magenta and peach and lime and amber and umber and all the rest. And the people would smile, get a funny look on their faces, and cover the world with imagination. So, if you have a Roomba, robotic vacuum cleaner, you do a time lapse of what the vacuum cleaner does. It turns out like that. I don't know if you find that inspiring. This is cheap time lapse art. Then hot air balloons. This is much more costly, but and it's somewhat dangerous because your balloon may hit a power line and then start burning and stuff like that. So bad things can happen. And okay, it couldn't just be visuals and things you see and like experiences that would have to be like poetry, music, so on. So thought that the windmills of your mind might be part of what would suit this new thing. Round like a circle and a spiral, a wheel within a wheel, never ending or beginning, an ever spinning reel like a snowball down a mountain, or a carnival balloon like a carousel that's turning, running rings around the moon like a clock. Its hands are sweeping past the minutes of its face, and the world is like an apple whirling silently in space, like the circles that you find in the windmills of your mind. So the high-level bridge, probably all of you have thought about the high-level bridge. It has many different aspects to it, but in 2014, they decided to put lighting on it. They also put, security, those fences that are currently there, so you can't so easily jump off. But they put lighting, and then it's still true today that you can petition the city to have the bridge lit in a particular fashion for your non-profit society, whatever you're doing. So we decided that green and orange, which was the color of the robots. So this article about the course that many of you may know, the Edmonton Journal article about the course, those robots that are in my living room still. So we kind of picked those colors of orange and green, and we had that as our colors. And we did it, we took pictures. It was kind of a class activity. We gathered there before sundown, and it was kind of cool, but I don't know. It's a lot of effort to go through, and I think most people who drive across the high-level bridge, they could care less what the colors are, right? And although there's a notice of what the current colors mean, most people don't take the time to read it, right? So anyway, it's kind of a low-impact thing to do. So I welcome your ideas about what we should do. And this is related to what we started talking about last time, is what kind of a term do you want this to be? Do I contact Nikolai Smith and tell him we want him back for the 4th time, or would you like something different? Or do these outside things beyond regular class time really not work for you? Okay, let's see where we are. Yeah, this was a required slide. In addition to the other complaints that Marcus Hutter had about never wanting the world to see the video of him interacting with U of A students, he also wanted this credit. So this is the link to his writing and the other things that he refers to in the slide set. Okay, so now we have lots of time. We have 25 minutes. So I guess I'm forcing mainly on the four of you there. So tell me, what are your thoughts? I mean, the years when we have not done any of this extra stuff, I don't know quite what the reasons have been, but it seemed to me it's just practical life things, that people are obligated in the evenings and the weekends, and so if that's the case, that's fine. It's slightly different from the question of whether we should start up the student group, because we could do that with the students from previous years, right? So that would include you guys, even if you who are just taking the course now for the first time are not particularly keen on the stuff that the student group might do. So what might it do? Well, for instance, rather than waiting to the end of the course and then having the student presentations be in this room, on some regular basis over 3 days, and just that kind of anxiety-provoking sort of thing and nothing else, that we mixed it with food and drink and entertainment and so on. So it kind of, your presentations could be mixed with a party-like atmosphere that is enjoyable. It's also another way to get to know the other students, not just the other students taking the course now, but the previous students who have taken the course and so on. So, time for you guys to talk. What are your thoughts about this stuff in general or specifically?
I'd be interested in it.
Okay, well, that's good. Yeah, so what about the rest of it?
Kind of depends when, because with lab work, it's really hard to have a definitive schedule, especially the lab work I'm doing, because it goes off of who's having surgery on every day of the week. Because I can be in the lab from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. some nights, so it depends on like when we would be planning on doing it.
Yeah. No, I think that whatever would be most convenient for you, I mean, the weekend's fine, you know, if there's some, it has to be a time that you would actually enjoy it. Like if the only time you're free is like the middle of the night, but that would, you would hate it then we're sort of stuck, right? But if you can propose a time when it would actually fit in with the other things that you're doing for us to do this kind of thing. I mean, if you think of a street performer's life, like they are dealing with all sorts of extreme conditions, right? So we told Nikolai Smith that, we're planning an event, like at 1 a.m. or something. I'm sure he could do it. It's an unusual time to start a party, but I mean, he could do it. So there are, I think we can, I'd like to try to also give it a little bit of branding from you guys, so it's not just, mechanically taking what we've done in the past and doing it again, but like, why don't I send you the videos of what we have done in the past. So the first time, it was a kind of surprise, and I briefed Nikolai on what we would be talking about. So he came in sort of loudly complaining about the technological singularity is a bunch of rubbish, and, all this kind of thing, walking down the aisle and so on. And then at some point in this banter between me and him, he introduces himself and tells what he does for a living. He's been to law school, but he's not a lawyer. So no, I'd like to do it in a way that satisfies you, that seems somewhat consistent with what we've done in the past, and that's also appealing for other students, not only undergraduate and graduate students, but medical students. So why don't we, like if we kind of set a goal of, we're interested in like expanding the reach of the course to some extent, maybe making it seem more unusual to other people, like, these kinds of parties are not, I think, standard in other courses, right? But also that somehow it makes sense in their life, that they might want to, do something like this or have this sort of experience. So, yeah. And I would like it to be something that's not burdensome, where you're lying awake at night and think, oh God, I gotta plan this party for Dr. Solez. No, it shouldn't be like that. It should be like, take the elements of what you've always regarded as good, enjoyable social interaction and party experience, and then see how we can bring those ideas into this. So yeah, I'll send you the video, and I think we're also sort of flexible on timing. I mean, we have a lot of time. I think if we keep the current schedule, then I think it's something like the 3 presentation days would be April 2nd, 4th, and 8th, something like that. I don't know. So the question then how this would impact whether we wouldn't have any presentations at the end, or whether we'd have the party at the end, or, you know, what that's something else to think about. It's kind of the timing. When in the past, when we had the party relatively early, it allowed some people to give their final presentation early, but the papers still do at the same time, right? So you can use the feedback on your presentation to make a really awesome paper, right? Because you've already given the presentation, you've got lots of ideas from the reaction. So I mean, that's one way that it could work. We could unlink the presentation and the paper, have the presentations be much earlier, and then the paper would kind of represent what you're able to do in terms of taking the reaction to your presentation and making a really good paper from it, rather than the usual situation where the two are sort of at exactly the same time. Like in the past, you may be turning in your paper on the same day as your actual presentation. So, yeah, and you can think of other ways to modify that. So if you think of, you know, Rebecca's presence here, like the course is a lot more than 12 hours. The formal medical student elective is a 12-hour elective, right? So if she keeps coming, we've already accomplished something, right? She's not just coming for the grade on the 12 hours, she's coming because the course is so cool, and you know, she really, and maybe that will then infect other medical students, and they will also want to come either this term, or in the future. You know? So we have things like that we could accomplish in broadening the reach. Right before you guys came today, there were two students in here who just happened to be studying, and I was telling them about the course and so on, and they really indicated that they thought that the student body knows practically nothing about this course, you know, that we could. And in a sense, that isn't true in a formal way. In the early years of the course, the only way I could get any students at all was by personally putting posters in like every legal poster place across campus. You have to keep doing it because the high-profile places, they take down posters quickly, and people would see me doing it and say, it's like watching Wayne Gretzky put up a Wayne Gretzky poster. But anyway, so it isn't that we have not made any efforts to promote the course, but I guess the question is, how would you suggest we do it differently? If you think it is true that if more students knew what actually happened here, that we'd end up with a lot more students. The course used to have a maximum of 40, and we never ended up with more than about 14. So now it has a maximum of 22, but we won't ever have that number, I don't think, either. But still, it would be nice to have a bit more than we currently have. So that's one thing to kind of contemplate.
I feel like maybe there's a way you can reach grad students better, because I know I found out about this course because she told me, but otherwise I would have had no idea that it existed, and I don't know if many other grad students do, especially in the Department of Surgery.
Yeah. Well, part of it, I mean, you can argue some of it comes from the top, like, since the Dean of Science and the Dean of Arts have actually presented here, science and arts, their leadership knows more about the course than the other faculties do. Nursing knows a bit about it, but I think that's relatively unimportant, what the higher up leaders of the faculty know, right? It should be what the students know, right? How can we reach the students? And like a lot of the students in this course, it's a matter of seeing the comments on Reddit. Like they get to the U of A, they say, well, what's a cool course to take? And you just put in Google, what's a cool course to take at the U of A, you end up with a Reddit line about this course. So yeah. But anyway, okay, well, I think we're getting somewhere. And it isn't something you're doing for me, right? I mean, we're sort of doing it on behalf of, the whole educational enterprise here, I think. So it will ultimately benefit everyone. Okay, so that's fine. So I think Osmer Zayan is giving the next lecture. So anyway, do you have any other questions? What were your thoughts about the Marcus Hutter slide set? Was it as bad as I said it was, or not that bad?
They were a little dense.
Yeah.
A little emotionally detached for sure.
Yes, yes. Yeah, that's right. They are quite emotionally detached. Okay, well, I guess that's it for today. So you're getting out 10 minutes early. And we'll see you next Tuesday.
Oh, real quick, there's a feedback quiz on like the speaker this week. It should be available on the class like right after this class, so like at 3:30. If you could just take like 5 minutes and fill that out, that would be great.
Yeah, and E-class, this is the first term we've ever been on E-class. And so I can't really explain why it took us so long to get there, but anyway, thanks to the students who got us there this time. So, okay, we'll see you next Tuesday.